Yes, I am. And in fact, you were playing one of the many albums there, a track from one of the many albums that I lost, Neil Young's Rust Never Sleeps. So fortunately, I also lost some of his terrible mid-80s period, I think it was. Trans something, I can't remember the full name of it now, had an airbrushed cover, which was always a warning if it was an airbrushed image of a racing car.
I think it may have just been called Trans.
I can tell you how I lost the records, obviously, which is basically, some time ago, my house flooded with sewage. Though the water board said it wasn't sewage, I questioned that because it had all the properties of sewage. Even if it was technically rainwater, once it smells like sewage, looks like sewage, and has all the properties of sewage, can we call it sewage? They said no.
So your house flooded with sewage. I'm presuming it was perhaps a basement flat?
It was a basement flat, and which is why the A to the majority of C survived in the record collection. Not some of the later cut 12 inches, because obviously CU, by that point I'd had to go to the lower level of shelving. And then M to only P, in fact, there was quite a large section that also survived. So I have all of Morrissey. I still have Our Frank and Sing Your Life, but I don't have any of my beautiful Smiths 12 inches. Or bootlegs. I should obviously have them.
So, can you just take us through that moment? Because I think there's an awful lot of people who can relate to that, particularly, obviously, the older generation. They've got a lot of vinyl. I'm assuming this was all vinyl?
It was all vinyl. And do you know what? If it had been CDs, I wouldn't... The very few CDs that got affected, I didn't really care about, because I am of that generation where there is something so iconic and there is a kind of totemism, really, when I would see it some from Saturday jobs, sometimes from saving up pocket money, sometimes when I had got older, obviously, and just each one I could remember exactly where I bought it. So when, for instance, the More Specials, which I think was the earliest record I bought that got destroyed by the sewage, I remembered going into the Pinner Recordery. I'd saved up, I think More Specials at that point was £4.99 in the Pinner Recordery, and that every element of that, I remember sliding out the sleeve, the excitement when you slid out a sleeve, and it had lyrics on it or some kind of information, the annoyance when it was merely just a plain white sleeve with possibly something saying home taping is killing music.
So, can you just take us through that moment as you stepped down into the basement? Were you the first person to discover this?
No, I wasn't. I received the message it was a phone message from my wife who said our house has flooded with sewage. And it was
your instinct thought was not
a tremendously unsuccessful Edinburgh show as well. I was up at the Edinburgh Fringe. I flew back the next day and saw the damage and the destruction, and pretty much everything had been destroyed. Not merely the records, but the records in particular were the most intriguing things to see, in some ways destroyed. It was quite a gut punch, because as you look at each one, they look almost like they might be able to survive, because there's something about the properties of sewage that when it seeps into your beautiful cardboard sleeves of your Fatima Mansions records, you look at them and you think, well, maybe this will dry off, maybe it'll be fine, and then you don't realise that the insidious nature of sewage means that it just basically everything starts to crumble. So you initially just have some wrinkled record, and by the end of it, it's as if every record had a kind of equivalent of a picture of Dorian Gray, and you'd gone into the attic with a Flymo through all the canvases.
So you had what? Are we talking thousands of records?
It would have been. I've still got about 1,500 probably, and I probably lost 1,500, but I have to say that some of the records I have now were donated to me after the tsunami of sewage, and therefore that means I now have a lot more alien sex fiend than I would necessarily want, actually. It was very nice. A friend of mine who had quite a kind of goth and vaguely metal 1980s donated a record collection to me, and it was nice to have, but it now means that anyone, if from the moment when I die, or should it turn out I'm a serial killer and some kind of secret agency come and catalogue my record collection to create a profile, they will get the wrong gist of what I look like in 1985. I never painted my nails black.
And so this led you on a sort of odyssey, which is what you sort of document in your radio program, is that right?
Yes, well, basically, I started to get this sense that I might have been of the last generation. I'm 39 now, and I wondered if I was the last broad generation to be moulded by music. I'm not saying that there aren't lots of music fans out there who are, teenagers and in their 20s, but for actually, everyone in our generation, I know you're younger than me, but I feel that 30-something generation, music meant everything in terms of defining culture, and certainly there was a lot more tribalism. Nowadays I don't see people needing to be in a tribe. Certain towns, if someone lived in Haywards Heath, there would be the person who was into punk and they had the Damned Tipp-Ex on the back of their denim jacket, and then there would be someone else who they didn't like punk at all, they were into prog rock, and they were quite angry about that, and so they attempted in multicoloured Tipp-Ex, which I don't think actually exists, to create some kind of Yes cover on the back of a leather jacket, which I think would
Sure.
be quite tricky. Now we don't. I don't notice that level of tribalism. I notice when I go to gigs that there are obviously those people into things like lo-fi or the fantastic melancholy, miserable rock that can come out of Scotland. But I also don't. When I was going to gigs, first of all, I don't remember seeing lots of horrible grey old men like I am now at the gig.
So
But when I go to gigs now, I see lots of people my age.
is that just because you weren't looking out for them in those glory days? You were just perhaps eyeing out the hot chicks?
No, I think I would have been wary of the man there with the silver-topped cane. Why is he here, twirling his waxed moustache?
So I mean, this is going to be a contentious issue, and there's an awful lot of the younger listeners who will be up in arms at the idea that music doesn't count for as much for them, that they're not part of a tribe. I mean, you're going to have caused us an S-storm here on Six Music.
Well, yes, I think that's the main metaphorical message that I have now from this. But I won't tell you what the ultimate conclusion is. But it was interesting because I spoke to people like Stuart Lee, who has a far more fashionable record collection than I ever had, because even though my records defined me, I think equally I was never... I was quite faddy into indie and the Manchester scene and things like that, but I also still liked listening to Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, and I remember a friend of mine, Alex Thomas, having a go at me when I used to buy John Barry compilations when I was about 10 years old. You know, rubbish, why are you buying stupid soundtrack albums? Now he has John Barry compilations. So in some ways I was right, but I was also extremely wrong. I never needed a copy of I'll Go Blind Before I Stop by Meatloaf. I have no idea why I bought that. I mean, because sometimes I would just buy records because I needed to buy records. I'd go to Woolworths, and they used to have so many records, and they'd all be marked down savagely. And I think, well, there's nothing here that I really want, so I might as well buy this Kid Creole and the Coconut. I might as well buy Hollywood Beyond, What's the Colour of Mummy.
So, Robin, of the many records that you've lost, there was one that you were hoping we could play a tune from on today's show. Can you name it for me?
Well, I gave you a choice of two, so I'm going to give it a go, and I hope you've picked the one I most wanted to hear was obviously the Wooden Tops from Hypno Beat Live, Travelling Man.
You will not believe your luck, mate. Here it is. From all, blimey, that cut off bluntly. That's what would happen if, of course, it was drowned in sewage. That's exactly what you. That's exactly recreated the how it would have been if you'd listened to that record post crap. So it was the Wooden Tops, and from their 1987 album Hypno Beat Live, and the tune was Travelling Man, and it's one of the many songs that Robin Ince lost in his great disaster of several years ago. And you can hear his radio show, How Robin Ince Got His Groove, back on Radio 4 on Thursday morning at 11:30. And of course, if you do something really bourgeois like work or study, then you can use the Radio 4 Listen Again feature, and you'll hear how Robin goes on his pursuit to replace his record collection and also explore his love of music. Is he the last person to, part of a generation that's defined by music? I suspect not. Oh, Sammy's shaking her head there, appalled and up in arms.
I'm just quite upset by the comment.
Sure.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to say anything on air because I don't want to get into fisticuffs, but I have a tattoo for my band.
You have a tattoo? Do you have a band?
Not for my band, for the band that I desperately, deeply love. Now that's commitment to your music.
Where is the tattoo?
I'm not going to get it out. You might pale and fall over. But it is there. It does exist.
Wow. You're so rock and roll.
I'm just so upset. I'll be honest. Me and Judah sat there going, no, you're wrong. And I feel upset by it. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave it there.
All right, listen, don't kick off because we've got live music from Beth Rowley, all right, after we've heard from the Lemonheads. From the Lemonheads 1996 album Car Button Cloth, that's If I Could Talk, I'd Tell You. Steve Show, BBC Six Music with me, Steve Merchant. Live music in a session. In a session? Well, it is in a session, yeah, that's fine. I was going to say in a second, but you can say in a session. It is a session. It's a musical session coming next with Beth Rowley. Prior to that, we have to have a musical choice from Tiny Dan. What have you got for us?
This week I've moved back for another soul classic, and I know that it used to annoy you when we were flatmates. You'd say that some of my records, they're a little bit wibbly wobbly, a little bit insipid, particularly if I was going down a soul jazz route. Well, this one isn't. This is staggeringly heavy soul. It's the sort of soul that if it wanted a loaf of bread, it would just walk into a shop, it would walk through the wall, it would take the bread,
Sure.
punch the baker in the face, shove him in the oven, laugh, eat the bread in one go and walk out.
That's heavy soul.
It's massive. It's Eddie Floyd, and it's a song called Big Bird.
Thank you. Dan's musical choice on the Steve Show this week. What was it again, Tony Dan?
Big Bird by Eddie Floyd. And thanks to Tom, a good friend of mine, who pointed out that track to me. It's monstrous. I love it.
It was Monster Soul.
It was huge, wasn't it?
Huge
Yeah.
Soul.
Yeah. Eddie wrote it apparently when he was waiting at an airport to catch a plane to Otis Redding's funeral.
Really?
Yeah.
That's.
I don't know what sort of fact that is really. It's just it's a curio that I thought
It's
I'd
exactly
chuck
the
in
kind of fact that the Anal 6 Music listener wants.
I liked it.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so
problem.
I'm very pleased to welcome, and I'm hoping we'll have some kind of round of applause as we welcome Beth Rowley into the studio. Live music from Beth coming up shortly. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
How's it all going?
It's all going good, thank you.
Yes. Sorry for interrupting your Sunday. I imagine you're doing something pretty laid back and cool on a Sunday.
No, it's okay. Just hanging out. This is fine.
You were just hanging in the crib. You thought, why not pop down to 6
Exactly,
Music?
that's
Absolutely. And I think we have something in common. We have Bristol in common, don't we?
Yes, I believe so. Whereabouts?
I wouldn't want to say specifically where I came from in
Come on.
Bristol in case they sort of end up putting up blue plaques and sort of bronze statues and stuff like that. And also my parents, we apparently if you give a shout out to anything on
really?
BBC Radio, thousands of drunkards go down there and just rip it apart, and my
Okay.
parents wouldn't like that. Although I don't know, it might give them something to do on a Monday, clearing up. But anyway, yes, I'm in Bristol. You were born and raised in Bristol, or what's your
I
story?
wasn't born there, but I lived there. Yes, I grew up there, and it's where I call home. So,
And do you have the West Country accent like me?
it comes out
There it was.
when I'm
I know,
with
it's
when
just
I'm with
there it
other
was.
Bristolians.
It's strange,
comes
that,
out.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I can sort of affect a certain hello there, I'm quite posh when I'm up in London. But yeah, as soon as I meet another person, all right, my bab rose. I tell our ma said you got out there. I said I bloody hate me. You know what I'm talking about. You know it.
That's it. Yeah.
But it's not something that. So yeah, I mean, yours is quite a sort of soulful sound, and it's not something we necessarily do. We associate that with Bristol? We associate trip hop, I guess, and
I
stuff
guess
like
so.
that.
Yeah. There's that whole. It's really well known for Tricky and
Of course.
Portishead and that sort of
100%.
sound. But I don't know. I guess I just do my thing, and I'm happen to come from Knoll, so
From Knoll?
I'm proud of that. Yeah.
Oh no, is that quite rough?
I think it's known for being. It's kind of near Knoll West, which I think is.
Oh, that's a bit
is
rougher,
more
isn't
known.
it?
But I mean, my gran lives in Knoll West, and she's really lovely.
Yeah.
So
She doesn't kick off. She carries a flick knife in her
She
handbag.
does,
Aside from that. Okay, so maybe before we talk further, we should just hear something from you so that we get a sense of what your sound is. What are you going to play for us?
This is called Almost Persuaded.
Thank you very much. Come on. That's absolutely fantastic, Beth. Really, just so extraordinary. I mean, I used to go to a lot of karaoke nights in Bristol, and I never heard anything quite like that. I'm always intrigued. It's odd that you come because I've never met anyone who sings like that and also comes from the place that I grew up in. When you find out you can sing like that, do you go along to karaoke thinking, "Ding dong, I'm going to show them on Friday night"?
I haven't ever been.
You've never done karaoke?
No, there's one in Bristol, down by the ice rink.
Oh, yes,
A Chinese restaurant stroke karaoke place, which I've been into a few times, but I've not, just for food, and
Yeah.
and they're doing it down the end. But I've never really got up myself, and I'm a bit nervous to do that.
You were a bit nervous to do that. Have you heard the quality of karaoke?
Well, it's not, no,
Are you worried because it would seem like showing off?
No, not at all. No, I would be up for doing it. All my mates are into it, but it's just more fun watching, I think.
Yeah, and giggling and thinking how extraordinary I am, and look at that loser.
I should point out, a friend of mine's actually set up a private karaoke booth place called Karaoke Me in Bristol. Have you come across that?
No, where?
It's like instead of being in a bar where you have to entertain everybody, you get your own booth and do all that, like in Japan. And it's the only one outside London in the UK. Karaoke Me.
Thanks very much indeed.
Residents only. Yeah.
Good.
Anything else anyone would like to plug that their mates are involved with? That is shameless. At the beginning of that song, you mentioned that you saw a man with a drink in his hand. If that drink were a gin and tonic, and you yourself fancied a gin and tonic, and you thought, I better go to the bar and order a couple of gin and tonics, would you say, oh, excuse me, can I have 2 gins and tonic, or 2 gins and tonics?
I'd say 2 gin and tonics. Oh,
Yeah.
well done. Yeah.
In Bristol, usually it's a couple of Smirnoff Ices.
But are we